Hi, and welcome back to this channel where we're exploring the ways of creating better tech by using user-centered design and other user experience improvement techniques. Okay, today video we're going to talk about strategy for mobile first. So what does it mean? Okay, a lot of companies these days, they know that a majority of people are accessing internet via mobile. In fact, I think at the time of making this video, around 60% of people in the world will access this internet on their mobile. Again, we have to be careful with the statistics because it all depends on the field. So, for example, portfolio managers and professional traders with whom I worked in the past, they will never want to use mobile as a primary access to the tools they use on a daily basis. So they definitely would want to use desktop. In fact, they would like to use multiple screens for their daily activities. But you know, for anything else, for any kind of relaxed access to internet, such as shopping and things like that, booking holidays, of course, people will prefer to use mobile whilst watching telly or Netflix or something like that. So it became more important now for the companies to make sure their mobile experience is better than their web experience. When I say better, it doesn't mean that the web experience is bad, but a mobile experience really needs to be really good and easy to use, so that people actually are able to finish order, shopping, getting cinema tickets, booking holiday, booking, ordering food and stuff like that. It needs to be very simple. In the past and even now, what's happening is that the companies would have a website or platform they have on desktop at the moment, and they make it responsive. I'm making this air quotes is because they think that if the website is visible on mobile and people can get through this, it's good enough to go. But the reality is most people, if the mobile site is not loading or things are too small or difficult to click, they're just gonna drop off and go to competitors. So that is the reality. Hence, now a lot of companies really want to focus on mobile first. And what that means that when they're building a new proposition or new platform, they mostly start with mobile design first and focus on that, and then expand it to actual desktop experience. Okay, there's more things to this than just that, so I'm gonna cover them today in this video, very high level for you guys. On other videos, we're going to go into more details on each of those points, but this is just to give you an idea. If you start a contract somewhere, if you start a job somewhere, a project somewhere where you want to be mobile first, you need to take those things into account if you want to succeed in the mobile first space. Okay, let's have a look at some of the details. Okay guys, so let's have a look at those 8 important points when going mobile first. And obviously, as the name indicates, mobile first means that when we start a project, we actually start with the mobile designs first. So this could be not just, so it can be a responsive website. So if you start a project for a company that wants to build a responsive website, if the approach is mobile first, start with designing the mobile screen first and working out what are the main elements and so on. And only after you kind of have are happy with what you have on mobile, can you start thinking, okay, what the same kind of layout would look like in the desktop example and stuff like that. Of course, this is very simplified Tesla designs and so on. This is just to give you an idea that first you would start working on the mobile, and only then you would move to of course, for example, menu here will be much more extended. It's not going to be hidden. So here you might have different models available. As you know, on the mobile, we usually use a burger menu, or I strongly recommend using, instead of burger menu, actually a word menu. Trust me, lots of people still don't know what the burger icon actually mean. So yeah, something like that. So you'll have different models, IS, and then the model 3. So obviously this is a really quick mock-up, but just to give you an idea of you know, what it means to kind of go mobile first. So similarly, if it doesn't have to be like responsive website, you can also have a company quite often that they want to have a desktop and mobile app. So then again, I strongly recommend looking at the mobile app, or depending what the decision is and why you're doing the mobile app versus just responsive website. But just always with the mobile first, whether it's a responsive site or it's a app, just start with the smaller screen first in mind, rather than going and designing for desktop. The reason for that is when people start designing desktop first, they usually put lots of stuff in, like because there is idea of the white spaces and empty screens not being cool. So a lot of people on the project might start adding lots of things, and very quickly that desktop will become really busy. That's why if you work on mobile first, it's great to just start with mobile size, and that will allow to just people to focus on the bare minimum and things that are the most useful for people. Okay, now if we are to go to next one, and obviously I quickly mocked up some of the screens that could be useful for you guys. So next point to think about is to design for touch optimization. Okay, and what does it mean? I mean, you can obviously Google and search for it a lot, but essentially it means that designing interface that it's easy to be navigated and used by using your fingers, basically, right? So here on the left hand side you have example of the Tesla scheduled test drive and the selection of the cars. Here obviously I've put for you a very desktopy kind of radio buttons for the selection. Radio buttons are really bad in this way for mobile, because you can imagine this is really small clickable area. Of course, fair enough, you can increase the clickable area, but still it's quite small target for people. So we don't want to use radio buttons as such. On the right hand side I've put for you a much easier solution for people to click around and select what they want. Another thing to take into account when doing the designing for touch screens is obviously the size or buttons. Like this is very often is forgotten, so and very often is just actually really small. So even for the menu, so this is like clickable area. I think Google Material Design recommends 48 pixels height. In terms of the size, I sometimes go 48, sometimes I go 44. Some companies and some the design systems that companies use are going with 38. I think do whatever you can to kind of use big clickable areas, right? So like I said, I'm using 44. In some projects I use 48. It really depends also on the approach and branding and kind of what you have to work with. But just remember, don't make it small, because people will have problems clicking it or even recognizing that this is a clickable element, right? So the same goes to your text fields. Don't make them small. Make them pretty much the same size, height that you have your buttons and, like your mobile radio buttons selections. So just, this is like really quickly obviously covering the designing for touch is a much bigger subject, but just this is like a basic things that you can think about. Obviously creating the sliding carousels with your finger. Also remember that on mobile, you're not gonna have a hover state. So you're not gonna have on desktop, if you mouse over, you can see obviously some kind of tooltips and things like that. So remember that that's not gonna happen for mobile. So you will have to come up with some other solutions. It's for people to be able to see some hidden information, such as some kind of icons to be clicked for more information and things like that. But remember, you're not going to be able to rely on mouse over interactions. Okay, so just think about how to make things obvious on mobile devices. Okay, next up we have this idea when you work on mobile first to by default think about responsive designs. Okay, so here I also mocked up really quickly a Tesla website, and what I say responsive is like I'm saying try not to design for one particular screen on mobile. You know that there is plenty of different mobile screens these days, especially on Android. So just make sure that your layout that you've designed works for different sizes. As you can see here, I'm actually making it smaller and bigger. Well, actually, in Figma, you can very easily do this. I'm gonna use myself. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I'm gonna move myself. You can, here in frame, you can actually change to different frames, so for different font sizes. Okay, so you can just actually play around with this when you're creating your responsive designs and see for which ones it's not gonna work, because obviously you need to decide. So maybe like for very small ones, maybe it might not work, but I strongly recommend designing responsive solutions that work on as many screen sizes as possible, only because then you kind of inclusive and basically you'll just be able to reach more people. So even thinking like how it's gonna work on a tablet, right? So those are the things that you definitely need to take into account. Now, another thing when you're designing for mobile, just make sure you remember about all of these additional things, the notch that you have on the top, which means that you can't probably design so it's the like menu and logos, it's too close to the edge. You need to take into account that there's gonna be some you need to have some safe areas, same at the bottom of the mobile. So that's something that you need to think about. Okay, the point number 4, you need to prioritize content. Okay, so what does it mean? This is it sounds very complicated, but this is very straightforward. So here I took a screen grabs from eToro, obviously trading platform, very good trading platform. What I mean by prioritizing content is obviously we cannot squeeze in this small screen of mobile exactly the same amount of information that we put on desktop. What we do instead for mobile, we need to decide, or even better, with users, work out which pieces of content are the most important, which actions we want people to take, and then put only those options into the mobile screen. Don't try to push everything possible on this screen into this small mobile device, because it's going to be a horrible experience. Nobody wants that. So prioritization of the content is basically focusing on what are the top actions people are going to take, what is the top pieces of information they require to take those actions. Point number 6, or rather 5, it's keeping it very simple. So on the desktop solutions, like I said, people tend to make it very complicated. Mobile is actually great. I love designing for mobile and then going using the same design or similar design for web, only because you have so little space on the mobile that you can literally keep it super simple. So you will bring only the elements that are absolutely necessary for this screen, for the user to be able to use that, right? Next one is pretty big. It's number 6 is optimizing images. Okay, so what does it mean? If I looked at Tesla's website, which is exactly where I took those images, you can see that for desktop they use, this is actually a really big image. It's like really high res image, which is cool, but it's optimized, which means that they've used tools to optimize and compress it so that it doesn't take so much space when loaded. So that's super important when we're designing for mobile, and then we're exporting images for developers. And not only do I recommend to compress those in big images, you can use, there's plenty of apps to do so. You can use Image Optim, which is my favorite. So basically you just drag it into the Image Optim, and you can just compress it massively. You can even lose like 70% of the size of the file, which then means the website loads much quicker, which is super important on mobile because people might have a much slower internet on the mobile. Now Tesla goes even further than just optimizing images. They actually swap images when they detect that somebody is using a mobile phone. So when you switch to the mobile view, they actually load a different image, which is much smaller, which is wonderful because that means their website is gonna load even faster on the mobile devices. Now, point number 7 is testing your design on real phones. So two things you can do. If you're only on design stage, you can preview your phone, preview your application on the phone. By using Figma Mirror. So you can literally install the mirror on your app and then click on the frame and you'll be able to see it as if it's a real thing on your phone. So that's one thing you can do when you're designing. I strongly recommend doing it because we sometimes think that things work really nicely in our design file, but then as we actually put them in on your phone, you realize things are too small or too far away from each other. It doesn't feel like really good. I also strongly recommend making clickable prototypes and actually use them on your phone and see for yourself how the experience works. So and then point number 8 is obviously something that we recommend for any UX designer, is once you have a clickable prototype, please do get feedback from the users, test it with them on mobile phones first if you're going with mobile first. So get feedback, do usability sessions, and iterate until it works really well. Okay guys, so there we go. We covered our 8 points to consider when actually doing mobile first. Again, just to iterate, mobile first becoming more and more dominant approach when working on the digital projects. Hence, take that into account when you're working on mobile next. So those things that we covered is, if you're working on mobile first approach, then start designing with the mobile screens rather than desktop screens, because desktop screens tend to become very messy and very busy, and we don't want to do that. That's why we want to focus on the best, simplest experience on the mobile. Now, point number 2, design for touch optimized screens. Okay, don't just use a responsive desktop approach where you just take whatever desktop UI you have and just grab it into the smaller screen. Make sure that the UI you create is specifically optimized for mobile, so the buttons are bigger, you don't use radio buttons from desktop. Things are, responsive to your fingers, so you can have sliders and so on. Remember that you're not gonna have a benefit of mouse over on mobile and things like that. So you can research a bit more. This is just to kind of give you an idea of like little things that you should start thinking about when designing for mobile. Number 3 is obviously, I always advocate for that anyway, but if you design for mobile, think about responsive. Don't design just for one particular screen, because you will have problems with that, especially on Android devices. That is like massive variety of them, of different aspect ratios, heights and widths. So make sure you cover most of those different sizes, and ideally just work with responsive. That is the simplest way of being able to access all of your users rather than selected few who actually have phones that you design for. Okay, number 4 is prioritizing the content, and what that means, like I said already, making sure that you don't try to squeeze in all of the content that you want from desktop into the mobile. Just think about what are the main actions you want people to take on this screen, and what is the minimum information we can provide for people to take those actions, and just go from there. Okay, point number 4, keep it simple. Like we already said, don't overload the screen, just make it super simple as possible. Actually, this approach you can use also for desktop. Number 6 is optimize images. So make sure your images are not massive, because that will cause lots of issues for mobile users. Number 7, test on real devices. So don't just view your designs in Figma on your desktop. Make sure you mirror your designs into your phone, and you actually can click through, create prototypes, and just feel for yourself and your team, like try test with them as well, whether it's a good experience. And number 8 is my favorite and is most important thing. Please test with users, do usability testing, get some feedback, iterate until you get to the really good point. Anyway, that's all I wanted to share with you today about the mobile first approach. This is a very simple strategy, 8 points that you can follow. Now, if you like this video, please like it or share it with your friends. If you like our content, please follow us. We really appreciate it, and ask questions so we can make more content like this, but it's so more helpful for you and the subjects that you're really looking for. Anyways, have a great day, and remember to make better tech. Bye!